Hello.
And welcome to the first episode of Dead Curious.
We are your strange sister hosts. I am Roxanne,
And I'm Jessica.
and this is our podcast where we will be discussing creepypasta, true crime, ghost stories, and any other sort of macabre thing that catches our eye and is usually death related. We've decided that we just want to get straight into the storytelling. But if you guys are interested in finding out more about us and getting to know us a bit, we will be releasing a short bonus episode just to kind of introduce who we are and where our interest for the creepy came from.
For the first season, we've decided to cover stories from South Africa,
Keeping it local.
keeping it local.
So, you are doing our first story, I believe.
Yes, I am.
And what story have you brought us?
Today I'm going to tell you about the Uniondale Ghost, which is one of South...
Oh, I love that one.
Yes, it's one of South Africa's most famous ghost stories. Okay, so Uniondale is a small town in the Western Cape of South Africa, and the town is connected by the N9 road and the R339 road. And I thought I'd put that information in there just in case anybody wants to pick up a ghost on the road. All right, so Uniondale is very well known for this particular story about a young woman who stands alone alongside the stretch of road between Uniondale and Willowmore. And when people stop to offer her a lift, she gets into their car or onto their motorcycle, and after traveling a short distance, she simply vanishes.
Okay, question. So
Yes.
these people actually see her, like they actually see a person, they think it's a real person.
Yes,
Or do they
it's
like
an actual... No, it's a physical person. Like they actually
so
stop.
it's not like, oh, I'm see-through, ooh, like come and
No,
join.
no,
Oh.
it's a solid person. It's not a transparent...
That's somehow creepier. Okay,
It
sorry.
is.
Continue.
They will pick up this woman and they will offer her a lift. She will give them the address for her destination.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I was not able to find what the exact directions were. It seems like she gives a vague direction because people often turn around to ask her where exactly they need to turn off. And when they turn around, she is then gone.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's like
she
right at the Whole Foods.
Well, they're hoping for a direction like that, but she's not there anymore. So yes, she appears as a physical, solid person, and she even speaks to them. And it's been said that an encounter with this ghost, once she disappears, she is often accompanied by laughter or giggling. There's a chill in the air.
Yeah.
Some people even hear a shrill scream.
Oh no.
And sometimes there is a strong scent of apples.
Apples.
Which is quite interesting for me because
Granny apples.
I don't know what kind of apples, but
Okay.
I actually found that quite interesting because the day before I found that out, Mom and I were talking about how different people have their own natural scent. And apparently I actually smell like apples. Those
you do
green...
you do have an apple smell.
I have a Granny Smith, those really green, fresh-smelling apples. So I don't know how I feel about that. I smell like a ghost.
You smell delicious.
Thank you. So yes, I don't know exactly what kind of laughter or giggle it is. I don't know if it's a fun, friendly sound or one of those menacing, impending doom type of giggles, but
She doesn't sound menacing.
No, she doesn't. But the thing that's confusing for me is the scream. Of course, I don't think that she's doing it to scare people. The scream is more likely, in my opinion, a residual type of scream, perhaps. But
so where do they drop her off at? Like, where does she get dropped off to?
She doesn't get dropped off. They never reach the destination.
Oh, what? She just disappears?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, because I like I said earlier, they would then turn around to ask her for the specific directions. Like they'll drive along the road in a
And she's
general
already
area,
gone.
but when they turn around in the car, they'll be driving and then they'll turn to look at the passenger seat or perhaps behind them, and then she's just gone. Yes.
Oh, wow. Oh.
Yes. And I will get into why I think the scream might not be a residual sound when I get into my next explanation. But the general assumption is that she's not trying to scare people. It's just like a mischievous type of thing that she's going for. She's not purposefully trying to scare people, but of course, you know, it's going to be
scary. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be scary.
Yes, it's scary, but it's not coming from a point where she wants to do any harm to anyone necessarily.
Okay.
It's like a playful type of mischievous sort of thing going on.
I mean, it must be rather boring being dead, in all honesty. You don't have
Especially
Netflix.
When you're stuck on the side of the road, it's definitely...
No Spotify.
Yes. All right, so let's get into the history of how this all started. So on the 12th of April, 1968, the woman whose name was Maria Rue and her fiancé were driving along the Willowmore Road around 20 kilometers from the town of Uniondale in stormy weather. And she was asleep in the back seat of their car when her fiancé lost control of the car.
Oh.
The car then overturned and she was killed, I believe it was instantly. And she would have been about 22 or 23 years old at the time. So she was quite young.
Quite young. Shame.
She's younger than me. So it's...
Yeah, just give away all our ages, Jess. That's great.
I don't care if people know how old I am. You know, so you don't have to say anything.
I used to say that.
Anyways, she's only slightly younger than me. She was only slightly younger. And there are some mixed opinions about what happened to the fiancé. Some believe that they both died, while the majority of the stories say that Maria was the only one who died in the accident. But nothing's really ever mentioned about him. Whenever you research the story, all that's really said is that they were driving along this road on Easter weekend and they crashed and she died. And the fiancé is never really mentioned. So I tried to dig into his story a little bit, and I'm going on the belief that he survived because I was able to find some information that he married another woman. He survived the crash and married another woman in 1969, so the year after the crash happened.
What?
Yes.
That is not a long enough grieving period. I'm sorry.
I definitely agree with that. I was definitely, I was shocked. I actually had to go back. I had to go back and look at all of the notes that I had made to make sure I got the dates right, because I was just, that's not okay. You know, the year after, it's a bit suspicious for me.
But then again, I mean, life is difficult and you don't know how you're going to react to trauma. And maybe he met this person in a very fragile state and they ended up moving on. So I'm not going to judge. I think I would not be happy if Jack's remarried so soon, but I mean, she's dead. She's having fun. She's clearly meeting people and getting
Mm.
around. I'm not slut shaming the ghost. I'm just saying she's getting lifts. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. And it is possible that this woman helped him through the grieving process. It's not necessarily to say that anything dodgy was going on before the accident. It could be
Yeah,
just
yeah.
a genuine relationship. So we're not going to go too into that, but that's what I was able to find about him, that he did survive the accident and he got remarried. But he was involved in another car accident in 1984, which
Whoa.
resulted in his death. So it's a very, very sad ending for both of them. And I don't know what road he died on. I don't think it was the same road. But it's unfortunate that he had to go through that experience twice. And
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that they both died at such a young age,
Yeah. Shame, man.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into some encounters with this ghost.
Ooh.
The first reported sighting that I could find, the first recorded reporting of an encounter with this ghost, was when a young man was driving down the road. It was on Good Friday in 1973. He offered her a lift. She got into the car and she gave the address for her destination. And as I'd mentioned earlier, after traveling just a short distance, she had disappeared. The man noticed that she was no longer in the car. He, of course, became quite distressed by this realization, and he reported the incident to the local police.
Oh, so
The
there's police
policeman,
reports of this.
yes,
Okay, that's legit.
yes. The policeman did not believe the story, obviously, but he decided to go. He decided to go along and check out the story anyway. So what happened was the police officer was driving behind this man. They were driving along the road, and what happened was quite shocking to the policeman and the man driving the car, because while the policeman was driving behind him, the policeman witnessed the passenger door of the young man's car open and then close again, as if someone had gotten.
What?
Yes.
Was the car
So the
moving
driver,
or did they park it?
the car was moving. Once this
What?
happened, he stopped the car immediately to go and speak to the policeman, who
Yeah.
was obviously shocked. And the policeman had confirmed that he had seen the door open and close without any action or movement from the driver of the car. So there were two witnesses, the man driving and the policeman who was driving behind him, who both saw the door open and close on its own.
Oh my God, I just got goosebumps, like legit.
Right? That's honestly my favorite
Oh,
story out
word.
of the ones I found.
I love
That's
it.
just because for me, this is so exciting when it's just when it's just you who sees something like this and you tell other people, no one really believes you. But as soon as you get a second person who sees the exact same thing that you do, it's just the sense of relief that the person has no choice but to believe you now.
I wish that this happened when policemen were using dash cams.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, wouldn't it have been great to
definitely.
have some footage with this thing?
But I'm just happy for this guy that he was able to get someone, a police officer, to report that he had actually seen that happen. It was a real
Yeah,
thing.
an actual thing, and he's not going mad.
Yes, that's another thing as well. Like you feel like you are going crazy, and then to have someone else outside, like not even in the same car, outside of the car in a separate vehicle, driving behind him, and they see and experience the exact same thing. I loved it. This
That's
was a
awesome.
great story for me.
And you said this happened on Good Friday,
Yes,
and
yes.
this Luru chickie, I got the
Mm-hmm.
name right,
Rue,
right? Rue.
just
Just
yeah,
Rue. Okay. She passed away on Easter weekend.
yes.
So this is
All of
like,
the all of the encounters with her, any encounter with her happens over Easter weekend.
oh, okay, wow. So I know what we're doing next weekend. I mean, weekend, next
Next,
Easter weekend.
yes. I mean, I'm down for that if you want to. You could be joking.
Road
You're
trip.
probably
No,
joking.
road trip.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. No, I'm down
No,
for
we're going to
that.
do that. We're going to do it. Let's do it.
Okay. All right.
Road
Okay.
tripping. Going to see
Okay,
some
I'm excited now.
ghostesses.
All right. So my second encountered story happened again during the Easter weekend of 1978. And this encounter was with an army corporal named Davy van Jaarsveld, who stopped to give a hitchhiking woman a lift on his motorcycle. He gave her his helmet and they set
Oh.
off down the road.
Yeah. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Okay. Well, she
About,
was, wait,
yes.
she's wearing a helmet.
Mhm. She's wearing
Oh
the
my
helmet,
gosh. Okay,
yes.
yes, carry on.
Okay, so about 16 kilometers down the road, he felt a bump. He looked back, he turned around, he looked back, and he noticed that his passenger was no longer on his bike. So, fearing that she may have fallen off, he drove back up the road that they were on, but he could not find her. And what was strange about the incident for him was that he found the helmet that she had been wearing neatly strapped to the backpack that he had on.
What? She
Yes.
is a friendly ghost.
She is. See, she could have just stolen the helmet and been on her way, but no. She disappeared and his helmet was found
Well,
neatly strapped.
if I
So
was
it
a
wasn't just
ghost, I would be one of
mhm.
those dramatic ghosts, and I would just be like poof, and then like the helmet falls and then goes
And
down the street, and the
it
guy's like, "Whoa,
crashes.
what happened?" Yeah.
She's much friendlier than you. So yes, that was an interesting detail for me as well because he had clearly given it to her. It was on her head, and instead of, like you said, just falling off and rolling down the road,
Mm.
it was packed. It was neatly strapped to his backpack, with care. It wasn't just like, okay, throw the thing on the side of the road and be done with it.
Well, it's
She
quite
she took the time, I guess you could say, to make sure that he wouldn't lose it.
What's interesting is that a lot of ghost stories, when people see ghosts or hear of ghosts, it's usually an apparition and they can
Mm,
only move things a little bit. So the fact that this
mm,
spirit has form, has weight, because you said they can
mm-hmm.
feel, he obviously felt her sit behind him. I mean,
Yes,
some would argue that that shows that she's maybe quite a powerful entity.
I would say so. Um, but I mean, okay, we can get into the theories on that at the end of the story. But I feel like perhaps there's nothing else in the environment that could be taking any energy away from her.
True.
So I think because she's basically like the only real spirit in that area, perhaps that's why she's, got so much
Could be.
power to be able to interact, have a physical form, and I mean, to open and close a door and all sorts of things like that. Um, but Mm, it might also not be so, and you will see why after my last encounter story.
Okay.
So this one is slightly different to the other two. This was in 1980, And this happened with a man named Andrei Kutsia, who was riding along the highway on Good Friday. But this time he didn't stop and give anyone a lift. He was just riding down the highway near the Baramdas turnoff. And he said that he felt his hair stand on end, and then he felt something put his arms around his waist from behind, as if there was someone sitting on his bike. So he didn't see anyone standing on the side of the road. He didn't stop to give anyone a lift. He just suddenly felt this person holding on to him.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And he accelerated. He increased the speed.
Yes, that's what
to
accelerate
about...
means.
All right, Roxanne, thank you. He accelerated to about 130 kilometers per hour to get away from the area. Of course, he was in shock.
Yeah.
But apparently, the ghost or whatever was behind him hit him 3 times on his helmet.
What?
Supposedly to get him to slow down. So in a sort of a panicked type of way.
Oh, okay.
But he panicked a bit more, and he eventually reached about 160 kilometers per hour.
Dude.
And at that point, the passenger disappeared.
Not safe.
So he no longer felt this thing or this person holding onto him. It just disappeared once he accelerated past 160. Yeah, so that one's a little bit of a different story. Usually, people see her and stop to give her a lift, but this time, the presence just appeared.
Wow.
And over the years, there have been a number of stories of motorcyclists picking up a blonde woman hitchhiker near Uniondale. But Maria was a brunette. So there may be more than one hitchhiking female ghost on the road to Uniondale. So perhaps Maria isn't the only one that's on that road. So maybe she is just a more powerful spirit.
I mean, there are hitchhiking ghosts. And so this isn't a unique story. Dad even experienced a hitchhiking ghost. Well, it sounded more like the third story. The way he told me was that he was driving on his motorbike, because our dad's cool that way, and he felt somebody holding him. Oh, he said he felt a bump while he was driving first, and then he felt somebody put their arms around him, and then he felt a second bump, and it was gone. And there was no one on that stretch of road. I think this was somewhere in Gauteng. They got very, very. There's very, very long roads leading into Johannesburg and out. So I think it was around about there, if I'm correct.
I didn't know that, actually. I don't think I've heard. Oh no, I have. He has told me that story. Yes, and he did tell me. Yesterday morning, he told me about a female hitchhiking ghost in Udenhaag. And apparently they take her to her destination. She gives the address and she disappears. She just vanishes once she starts walking up the street to the house.
I've heard that story too.
Yes. He said that one time someone who gave her a lift actually saw her go into the house. And then later on he thought, okay, well, she was kind of cute. Maybe I want to go and talk to her. And when he went to the house, he discovered that, of course, she wasn't there. And he found out that she had been dead for about 30 years. So that
What?
a shock
That's
for him.
Crazy.
So.
I actually have a story that Jax told me. He grew up in the Dispatch Utenhaag area, and he told me that apparently kids back then, I think this was when he was growing up, kids back then really enjoyed playing chicken. For those of you that don't know, playing chicken is when you stand in a road and basically stand in front of fast-moving vehicles and then jump away at the last second. And the goal is to see how close you can come to get hit by a car. Yeah,
Ridiculous.
So there were these kids playing this game, and this woman actually, because there's a bunch of kids, and now obviously there's a bunch of kids in the road. You're busy looking. It's difficult when you're a driver. There's so much to be looking at, and she was obviously looking at the wrong kid, and she hit one, and that child died, and it was the day before her wedding.
Oh no.
And apparently after that, naturally she called off the wedding, and yeah, it's just a tragic story. Rumor has it she never ended up getting married after that. I really hope. I haven't looked, like I said, your story just reminded me of that story, and this is the version that I heard. So if anybody out there knows of the story, knows who it is, I'd love to hear what happened to her, because I mean that's tragic, and it was not her fault, and it must have taken years of therapy to get through that. And I just hope that she's okay now. And the family of the boy who passed, I hope they're good too.
Oh, that's such a terrible story. That's so sad.
That is so sad.
Honestly, it makes me mad for the parents. Like, why are your kids? Why are they alone in a road? You know, just look after your kids, man. Keep them out of the streets.
This was years ago. This was when kids played in the streets.
Even so. I
know, but
you know roads are dangerous. You know, as a parent, as an adult, you know what cars can do. You know what kids.
Jade, I doubt that the parents drove them to this highway and said, "There you go, kids, have a great day." Like, I'm pretty sure that the parents didn't know what was going on.
No, I know they didn't do that. That's just dumb. But like, you should know where your kids are going. Like, you don't have to spy on them and make sure that they, like, you know,
actually
being
you do.
The best.
Kids suck.
Well, true. That's true. But like, know who your kid is with. Know where they are going. And know, like, more or less what they're going to do. You can't just have your kids say, okay, I'm going out to a friend, I'm going to go to this friend, and then you don't check up on them. Check up on your kids, because things like this happen, and It's like that. Something like that ruins a person's life.
Well, there's this poor woman. Like, her life is ruined. Her life was ruined by this.
It's difficult enough to cope with hitting an adult person, but killing a child, hitting a child in the road that's a whole other level. That's a trauma imagination. Just moral of the story is keep an eye on your kids.
Yes, ma'am.
Says the single girl. Anyway, so back to the story. That is the last encounter story, but I just want to wrap it up by saying, you know, as I mentioned before, what I really like about this story is that it's still relatively new and fresh, and there are police records that they were a real couple. The accident did happen. You know, there is proof that they existed and that they had died.
And there was that policeman.
And, you know, there's proof. There's proof of the accident. There's proof of the policeman who saw it.
And that army guy.
You know,
these are all figures of authority here. Like, they do carry a bit more. Their reports do carry a little bit more weight than, say, a teenager that maybe is high on the side of the road.
Yeah. And what's great about these witnesses is that they were all reported to the local police station. You know, it's not like these days where you experience something and you post it somewhere online. These witnesses all went to the police station and filed an actual report. And I believe at one point the fiance, I'm sure I read somewhere, but again, it was in only one article, so I can't I can't say for sure that it's factual, but apparently at one point the fiance himself even reported that he thinks it's her that's
Oh,
haunting that road.
shame.
So, yeah.
That's actually really
And the
intense.
theories, yeah. The theories around this are that she's still wandering around looking for her husband. Some believe, well, her fiance, her husband to be. Some believe that she's just trying to get home, and others believe that she can't accept or understand that she's dead,
Oh,
which is what you mentioned
it's so
earlier,
sad.
and that's a sad one. Yeah. You can understand why this is such a popular story. I mean, the details are so consistent. I
Yeah,
mean,
it
it
is.
happens around the same time. It's always Easter weekend. Um, except for that one story where she just appeared, people physically see her
Mm,
and believe her to be a real
mm.
person. I mean, someone had even described the clothing that she had worn in great
Oh,
detail.
wow.
It's not like a typical a woman standing in a white dress. She looked like a normal person. She had a jacket and long pants and boots on, appropriate to the weather. It would have been, I think, autumn around the
Mm.
time, so a bit cool.
So it's,
She was dressed appropriate for the time and for the weather, so you wouldn't expect it to be like some entity or
yeah.
something strange. You would think it's a woman in the cold who wants to lift to her destination.
And it's not just like you said, the fact that she's actually interacting with people. It's not like you get glimpses, which is what most apparitions are. Like people go, "Oh, I saw a person in
Yes.
a window. I saw a shadow.
Yeah.
I saw something get knocked off of something." It's not like that. There's a woman there
Mm.
who gets into your vehicle or onto your bike and vanishes. It's like there is a person, and
Yeah.
then, do you know what? That makes me think, actually, and I think I've got a strong case
Mm-hmm.
here. Maybe it's a time slip. They say that depending on where
Okay.
ley lines and stuff are, or if there's been a very tragic event like a death, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
there are time slips. So what if when she gets into the car, it's not a ghost, it's maybe actually really her. Like maybe she's from an an alternate dimension where she survived, or she didn't actually crash and she's trying to get home. So she gets into these cars, and then she slips back into her own time
Hmm.
because she's so
Maybe.
solid. I mean, she's a solid physical person. It's like,
Yeah. And people see her features. Like people see her clearly enough that they can someone has had identified her. One of the stories that I'd read, someone had identified her from a picture at the police station. Like this is the woman that I saw.
that's
So,
intense.
she appears as a person. It's not like, oh, I was tired, I didn't see clearly, whatever, I'd been drinking, blah blah blah. It's nothing like that. They physically see her. They see her face and her facial features clearly enough to be
Mm,
able to identify her from a picture. So that's it for my story.
wow.
Yes.
That's so sad. We got to
You
do
can,
these things with wine, I think.
oh, yes. Yes.
All right.
So I love this story. This is a great story for
And I
me.
think it's a great story for us to cover in our first episode.
Mm,
Um,
definitely.
it's very well known here in South Africa, and we don't really get featured in a lot of other podcasts. And here we go, an
Mm,
urban legend that's actually got some very hard evidence behind it, and we get to share it with the world. So,
yes. Yes.
yay! So, I think it is my turn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in our promos, we said that we were going to cover the Uniondale Ghost, but we kept my one a secret.
And what story will you be covering for us?
I will be doing the first South African, well, not the first South African, but the first female serial killer in South Africa.
Ooh, nice. I like the
Yes.
change from a ghost story to a serial killer.
Um, this story had everything in it for me. I didn't actually know about it before I started researching it, but apparently it's also one of those really, really well-known stories in South Africa. I think it's more for like the Dutch Afrikaans side.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jax apparently heard this growing up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he was like pretty stoked that I was doing it. And it was also it's something that has a lot of information out there on it because it's something that like legitly happened. Anyway, but
Mm,
we get into all the details. But what really caught my eye was that first of all, it's a female serial killer, and I
mm,
love those stories. And as a feminist,
mm-hmm.
I believe women can be murderers too. No, I don't. No one should murder. Murder is bad. But I'm so tired of
But technically, women could if they wanted to,
yeah, that's what
but
I'm
you
tired.
shouldn't want to.
No, I don't like feeling victimized by media and stuff because media does. Oh, I dropped something. Sorry. Media does sort of fetishize and romanticize rape and murder, especially in media.
Mm,
Um, and people focus on it a lot. Yeah, I don't know. It gets me down. It really does get me
mm.
down. So, hearing about these female serial killers, terrible, terrible stories, and I'm not advocating for serial killing. Um,
Yes.
as a woman, I find it refreshing to hear um, a twist on the story. It's not the same old thing the whole time. So I was quite interested, and I actually found the story looking up ghosts, and because I was originally going to do a ghost story. I much prefer ghost stories to true crime. I find them a
Yeah.
lot more creepy. But I ended up reading
So,
about this
sorry
woman's
to
case. Yeah.
I the reason why I would prefer ghost stories is because somehow it feels like less tragic and heartbreaking
It is.
because if it's a serial killer or a murder, it's something that you can definitely research and find the details to, and it just feels
Yeah.
so much real. Of course, like we said
Yeah.
earlier, we're going to say that a ghost story is or is not real, but
But the thing that
you
makes it
can.
interesting and maybe even fun, for lack of a better word, is
Mm,
the air of mystery. You don't know if it's
yeah,
real, and but you
yeah.
like to fantasize that maybe it is, and you like to fantasize that maybe it's not. But murder is real. Murder happens. Murder sucks.
Yeah. If a ghost story is sad, you can still convince yourself that, oh, there's a possibility it's not true. But with something like a murder,
Oh
it's
yeah,
you
Daisy
you you can't
DeMelka
escape the
existed.
facts.
Oh yeah, this happened.
Yes.
So the reason why Daisy DeMelka is so famous is because she was also like um, the first famous trial really to happen in South Africa because this was back in 1886. So this was when um, it was still, South Africa was still reasonably new and stuff. So it's the first like publicized media-driven trial. And a lot of
Hmm.
people actually, she's recorded as like the first woman to be hung in South Africa. That is incorrect. She's actually the second, if not the third woman to be hung in South Africa because we still had the
Oh.
death penalty back then. Yeah. But
Do you know who the first and second person was?
I did research them. I forgot their names, but both of
Oh.
them were women both of them were women who committed murder. Both of them committed murder with their lovers and both killed their husbands.
Oh. Like
Yeah.
crimes of passion type of deal.
More like they didn't want to get a divorce. They murdered the guy. It might actually
Oh,
be worthwhile looking into
well,
those.
that's a refreshing twist to the kill your husband plot.
Well, I mean, I guess so. So yes, let us get into it. Oh, but how I actually found the story was through like those websites that advertise all of the ghost tours and stuff in South Africa.
Oh, okay.
Because she's actually a very famous ghost. But today I'm going to be covering her story because I actually found her story a lot more scary than the ghost sightings.
Oh, all right.
So
Well,
let's get into it.
mhm.
Well, you were going to say something?
I was gonna say, well, tell us about it.
Oh, well, I will.
Good.
Cool. So, Daisy de Melka, South Africa's first female serial killer. So, Daisy de Melka was born Daisy Louisa Hancorn Smith in 1886 to William and Fanny at Seven Fountains near Grahamstown, South Africa. So that's in the Eastern Cape. It's actually quite close to where Jess and I are.
Mm.
And this is where I feel everything went wrong for her. She was one of 11 children.
Ooh, that's rough.
One of 11 children. Please,
Yeah,
I want people to let that sink in. Like, I feel like if you're going to have 11 kids, it's your fault one of them become a murderer.
I mean, like,
Do you
I
spend
mean,
any
as
one-on-one time with a kid?
no, you don't. And that is a genuine problem, and that is most likely what led to her becoming a serial killer. Because, man, children
They
need
are
a lot of
attention.
attention from
They
parents. You
do.
know, they model your behavior. They learn by watching you do what you do. They learn what is right and wrong from watching you do what you do. When you have a family with that many kids, there's not enough one-on-one parent-to-child time, and they end
Mm.
up growing up watching what their siblings do. And that's dangerous because kids, like we mentioned in my story,
Are dicks.
kids are kids are dicks.
Kids are
They
dicks.
do stupid and dangerous things. And when you have
Like,
a younger child watching their older sibling do that, that becomes a normal and okay thing in their mind. So it really is. It's not a good situation.
yeah.
I understand why people would want big families. I get the whole, family oriented personality trait that most people have, but just understand it's not a good time for your kid.
Well,
It's rough.
with that being said, there is speculation that possibly maybe having so many siblings might have caused people not to realize if she was different or maybe she
Mm,
was overlooked, but
yeah.
there's nothing there to say that her upbringing was terrible and all that stuff. It's just she had a lot of siblings, and I'm pretty sure that it would mean some overlooking would happen. But remember, this is
Mm-hmm.
1886. It was a different time, and also it was like her 20% mortality rate with children. Just to say
True,
they had
definitely.
just to say they had 11 kids is not to say that all 11 kids reached adulthood or even I've got to stop playing with this thing. I keep dropping it. Sorry. It's not to say that um I lost my train of thought.
It's not
Sorry.
to say that they all reached adulthood.
Yes, exactly. They probably didn't even all get to have kids of
Mm,
their own. I didn't follow up the genealogy, although apparently if anyone's interested, it is apparently available. So you can see
mm.
if you are a Demalka, you can find out if you are related to her, which would be quite interesting. But anyway,
I
back to the
think
story.
that's
Sorry,
I
yeah.
think that's actually where I found out that Maria's fiance was remarried because I tried to go into like the genealogy of it, but I mean I couldn't really find anything. But I think that was the one time where I saw that he did
Hmm.
actually survive, and there are records of it.
Yeah. Well, that
But
information is out there and available. She was quite
mm,
a busy lady, so I didn't get to that point for this podcast.
yeah,
But let's get into it. Let me tell you
yes.
why. Let me tell you why. So she was one of 11 children, which I've already covered. When she was 8 years old, her father and her two brothers left South Africa for Rhodesia, which we now know is today Zimbabwe. And
Hmm.
it's rumored, so I couldn't find clear evidence on this, but it's rumored that her mom had left them to marry a man in the nearby city of Port Elizabeth, which is where we're
Oh,
from. Shout out Port Elizabeth.
yes. Hey.
So a little bit of more family background. It obviously wasn't perfect. There were a lot of kids. Sounds like there was an absent mother. So that's where we're starting off here. So a few years later, Daisy would join her father and brothers in Rhodesia, and she traveled 2,000 kilometers by ox cart. And this was possibly because of her safety, because if you think back to the date, this was during the Anglo-Boer War.
Mm-hmm.
So she returned to South Africa when she was 13 or 15. I say 13 or 15 because different sources were telling me different ages. And she became a boarder at the Good Hope Seminary School in Cape Town. She did briefly return to Rhodesia in 1903, but she found rural life really unexciting. So she returned to South Africa and enrolled at the Berea Nursing Home in Durban. Okay. So she was studying to become a nurse. Da, da, da.
Wow. Okay.
Hint, hint.
I
So,
can see where this is going.
so she would visit her family in Rhodesia during the school holidays, and it was on one of these holidays that she met and fell in love with a man. This man had a name.
Naturally. Oh, and what was his name?
His name was Bert. Thanks for asking.
All right.
Not Bert de Melka, though. It was Bert Fuller.
Well, obviously, if it was Bert de Melka, it would have been her brother.
No, but if you remember, I said her name. She was born Daisy Louisa Hancorn Smith. She's not de Melka yet.
Oh,
Plot twist.
plot twist.
I don't blame you.
Oh, wow.
I had to write down a family tree to keep track of this story. So please ask
And
questions.
also, we are naturally blonde, and I do tend to have my moments.
I do have moments where I can't read names of people.
Or places. Okay,
Anyway, so she met Bert Fuller and they fell in love and they got engaged. And by all accounts, they were a very happy and in love couple. And they planned to marry in October of 1907. However, Bert Fuller contracted Blackwater Fever, which is a really, really crazy, rare disease. It basically, you get the anti-malaria vaccination, and the body, if your body's introduced to the malaria virus, your body actually, they suspect it's an autoimmune reaction, and your body ends up fighting itself instead of the virus. It is.
Oh, wow. That's awful.
But it is crazy rare that this does not happen. And the symptoms include vomiting, fever, anemia, because basically your blood, the little blood cells burst. And then what ends up happening is you die of kidney failure.
Oh, that's not great.
So Bert Fuller died on the very day they planned to get married, with Daisy at his bedside.
Oh no, that's awful.
And even though they were not married, he did leave Daisy with something. In his will, he left her £100, which in today's standards would be about 100,000 rand, which is like, and I may be wrong here, standard correction, but it's like $5,300. Which is not bad. They weren't even married yet, and he left her some cash. And 100,000 rand, and you're a student, not bad.
And that's a lot back then as well, considering the time.
Hells yeah. So after the death of her fiance, yes.
I'm a bit suspicious by this, if I'm being quite honest. Yes.
People die, Jessica. People die.
Yes, but this man has contracted this rare disease, and he has left a large sum of money to the woman he is not yet married to, who happens to be a nursing student. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun,
I'm suspicious.
Are you suspicious? Okay, well, you're very, very easily suspiciousized because nobody thought this was suspicious.
That's true.
And everyone kind of just moved on. So
Hmm.
after the death of her fiance, Daisy moved to Turfontein in Johannesburg, or Turfontein. Name, sorry, can't do names. So she possibly, no one knows exactly what she was doing, but it's probably for nursing work. And 18 months
Mm.
later, she married a plumber who was a
Surname?
man. Cowell.
Okay.
William Alfred Cowell. Foreshadowing. So after the death of her sister, she married William Alfred Cowell. Daisy and William had 5 children together. Only one would see adulthood.
Oh no.
So
But again, it's typical of the time, so.
it's there's nothing to say that it's her fault that these children died, but let's just go into the 5 kids that they had. So there are contradicting stories over whether it was the 3rd or the 5th child to survive, but the surviving child's name was Rhodes Cecil, and he was said to be Daisy's favorite. Her first 2 children were actually twins, and they died in infancy. There's no record on how exactly they died, but I mean, obviously, it was back in the early 1900s, and like there's already problems with child death, and with it being twins, these chances are compounded. So her first kids were twins, they passed away. Like we said, it was either the 3rd one or the 5th one to die, but the 3rd child to die was Lester, and he reportedly died of an abscess on his liver before his 5th birthday. Now, the symptoms for this is abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, strange colored stools, and unexplained weight loss. And the 4th child had apparently bowel troubles with very much the same
Similar symptoms.
yeah, pretty much. And that child died at 15 months.
Oh, shame.
So yeah, 5 children, only one survived. So being a plumber, William, her husband William, not her father William, William being a plumber often suffered from bodily aches and pains, which Daisy as a nurse would treat with Epsom salts. But early on the morning of 11 January 1923, William complained about feeling ill soon after taking some Epsom salts prepared by Daisy. Daisy called for a doctor who considered William's conditions to not be too serious, so he prescribed a bromide mixture, which was also something commonly used for spasms and pains, and then he left. However, soon after the doctor left, William's conditions got worse. Daisy then called the neighbors for help, and they called another doctor. But by that time, William was in excruciating pain. He was foaming at the mouth. He was turning blue, and he screamed and he would actually scream when people touched him. He was in so much pain. And
oh, that's terrible.
yeah, William died before the doctor could examine him. But based on these symptoms, the 2nd doctor was a little suspicious and suspected foul play, so he refused to sign the death certificate. He believed that William had died of strychnine poisoning, which is a poison, which was common back in the day. And
Clever doctor.
And they did, because the doctor wouldn't sign the death certificate, they had to do a post-mortem, but it concluded that they don't say whether or not they did a toxicology report, but they did conclude that the cause of death was chronic nephritis, which is basically inflamed kidneys, and a cerebral hemorrhaging. So, yeah, bleeding by the brain and the kidneys, not doing too well either. So Daisy now Cowell was the sole beneficiary of her husband's will and inherited £1,795 in life insurance. This made her a millionaire by today's standards. Not too bad. Plumbers did really good back in those days.
I am going to just point out that I'm once again a tad suspicious.
Why? Everyone's got stomach problems and dying?
It's a little bit strange. But continue.
Okay. So, over the next few years, Daisy and her son Rhodes lived in the house and off the money left by the late William. But Rhodes was growing up and now he was a teenage boy, and him and Daisy's relationship started to strain a little bit. You know, teenagers, kids or dicks.
Yeah.
So, 3 years after William's passing, Daisy met another plumber named Robert
Surname?
Sprout. Sorry, Sprout. Robert Sprout.
Okay.
So
All right.
you see where this is going.
This woman okay.
Okay.
All
so
right.
within months of meeting Daisy, they got married on the anniversary of William's death.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. So
Wait. They got married on the anniversary of his death. Or they met. Oh, okay.
No, they met. Oh, wait. Yeah, sorry. They 3 years after William died, she met Robert Sprout, and they got married on the anniversary of William's death.
Okay, got it.
So Robert Sprout and the now Daisy Sprout appeared to have a very good relationship. However, Rhodes, Daisy's son, and his stepfather, Robert Sprout, reportedly argued quite regularly. Obviously, kids are dicks. Who likes a step-parent? Okay, now there are people out there with great step-parents. Sorry, let's try not to judge. Anyway, so 2 years into the marriage, and Robert started to fall ill. He was experiencing vomiting and convulsions.
As they do.
As they do. So Robert's concerned brother, named William Sprout, there's so many Williams. So, just to clarify that, Daisy's father's name was William. Daisy's first husband's name was William, and Daisy's now husband, his brother, so her brother-in-law is also named William. So Robert's brother, William Sprout, traveled down to aid his sickly brother. And during this time, Daisy convinced William that it was a good idea to make her the beneficiary of Robert's estate, because at this point, after 2 years, she was not. And it was looking like Robert was on his deathbed. So William did get Robert to make the changes as Daisy had suggested. And soon after, Robert miraculously recovered.
Oh.
But this was
plot twist.
But this was short-lived. Months later.
Okay. I was going to say, that was making me a bit suspicious.
Because months later, he fell ill again with the same symptoms. And the same symptoms after having a beer with Daisy. This time, however, his convulsions were so bad they had to tie him to his bed. And with that, poor Robert Sprout died a terrible, painful death as well. Daisy received £4,560 from Robert's estate, and she even got extra payout from his retirement annuity. But it was the equivalent to 4.5 million rand. $240,000 worth. No,
that is insane.
No autopsy was performed, and Robert was buried next to Daisy's first husband, William.
Okay. I know it's not going to go this way, and I know I shouldn't be supporting her in any way, but I feel like she should have just stopped at this point. You know, stop while you're ahead.
Well,
I don't.
While you're ahead.
You know. Yes. Once you've gotten to this point, I mean, she's been pretty successful so far. You know, nobody's done these autopsies or toxicology reports or whatever.
Okay, but this is the early 1900s, and no woman has hung for serial killing before.
But just think about it. You've already gotten 4 million. You can only start going downhill at some point. Like, you know, just it's not a great thing. I'm glad she, is not doing such anymore. Well, I mean, obviously it was a long time ago. I'm glad she was found and caught, but she should have just stopped, is what I'm saying. If she wanted to be successful, again, not saying you should do this, but she should have stopped at that point.
That's what you get.
She's been lucky up till now.
That's what you get for being a dumb biatch.
Okay, continue.
Okay, we are now 21st of January, 1931, and Daisy Sprout is married for the third time to her new husband, Sidney Clarence de Melker, who was a plumber.
Finally.
Who was a plumber.
She has a type.
She has a type. So, the magic number 2 years went by, and Daisy and Sidney's relationship was going strong, as Sidney was able to put up with her demanding child Rhodes, who was...
Oh.
So, Rhodes was now 20, and he was getting more and more excited, as he was under the impression that he would inherit money from his father's estate after turning 21. But on March 2nd, 1932, Rhodes and a fellow co-worker fell violently ill at work after drinking coffee from a blue thermos flask, which Mother Daisy had prepared for them. However, after vomiting, both men had recovered. But a few days later, Rhodes fell ill again. This time he wouldn't recover. He died midday at their home, on the 5th of March, 1932. Daisy de Melker received another £100 from Rhodes's life insurance policy. But
I'm not liking this woman.
Yep. But good old William Sprout, the brother of Daisy's second late husband, had become increasingly suspicious of Daisy since the passing of his brother. And over the years, he actually kept a tab on her whereabouts and her doings. So
it's about time that someone noticed.
Yeah, so William was like, okay, my brother died, her husband died, her fiance died. This is weird. Weird. Okay, so William Sprout, who's very like-minded to my sister Jess. After the sudden death of Daisy's son, Rhodes, William Sprout conveyed these concerns to the authorities, and they took William's concerns very seriously. They obtained a court order and exhumed the bodies of Rhodes, Robert, and William. Traces of strychnine were found in both Robert and William's remains, while arsenic was found in Rhodes's body, as well as in the hair nails of his co-worker who also fell ill, and in the blue flask that the co-worker reported drinking from. It is said that during this time Daisy had switched from strychnine to arsenic, and she wasn't super clear on the dosages, so she actually failed at her first attempt at killing Rhodes.
Oh.
Yeah, her own son.
Her supposed favorite one, wasn't it?
Her favorite one. Anyway.
Ridiculous.
So a week later after this, the police arrested Daisy de Melker and charged her with the murder of all 3 men. So 3 accounts of murder. Which brings us to the trial. The trial of Daisy de Melker lasted 30 days and received a huge amount of media coverage and public attention. The pharmacist she bought the arsenic from had recognized her from a photo in the papers and came forth with the poison register signed by a Daisy Sprout, so she used her former name, for the arsenic. And she had claimed that she was going to buy it to euthanize an old cat. Yep. And this was purchased just a few weeks before Rhodes's death. So by the end of the trial, the Crown was unable to conclusively prove that Daisy had murdered her first 2 husbands. So she wasn't found guilty on that. But on the third account, the murder of Rhodes Cowell, Daisy de Melker was found guilty, and she was read the following sentence by the judge. Daisy de Melker, You have been found guilty of the murder of your son, Rhodes Cecil Cowell. You'll be taken from here to a place of execution where you will hang by the neck until you're dead, and may God have mercy on your soul. Daisy de Melka was buried in an unmarked pauper's grave in the Rebecca Street Cemetery in Pretoria West.
That is an intense story.
Oh, but it's not done. Staff.
I mean, up till this point.
Up till this point, yes. But
I mean, she's a bit of a psycho.
So she was accused of 3 murders. She was found guilty on 1, but she could have possibly murdered her fiancé and 4 of her kids. So she could have actually, in theory, murdered 3 to 8 people.
I'm going to say that I'm definitely leaning towards her having killed up to about 8.
It's a possibility.
Definitely.
Look, like I said, there is no solid evidence, but why did they all die of convulsion and vomiting? Like, every one of them experienced poison-like symptoms.
And she had something to gain from all of them dying as well.
Except for the kids, although I did get quite a bit of information from True Crime South Africa, where Nicole went into a lot of details on this case, and she's read up on books and stuff. And she mentioned that in one of the books that she read, or I'm not sure if she read it or if it was maybe a connection she made, but she was talking about the link between the death of Daisy's children and maybe postnatal depression, because that is a thing. Let's face it, postnatal depression is a thing. There are women who have committed suicide because of it. There are women who have abandoned and killed their children because of it. It is a very serious thing, and it is a tragic thing that does happen. So it's not to say that maybe wasn't the cause. Also, Nicole mentioned that very often if there are mental instabilities, that a lot of these things do come out either during or after pregnancy because of all the hormones. It actually triggers and makes these things more visible. So there is a possibility. I mean, like I said, it was the 1900s. It was a long time ago. We just don't know. But very interesting.
I have quite a morbid theory, and it could have definitely stemmed from postnatal depression. But what happened with the kids may have been, the way I'm going to say it sounds really bad, but I can't think of any other way to describe it. But that could have been sort of like, I guess, a trial run, to know the doses and how exactly it works.
So you suspect she was planning to kill her first husband for a while?
I believe so. Definitely. I mean, if I don't think any sane person, definitely no sane person would do something like this. So, I think the postnatal depression theory is definitely, that's something I could get behind. But I think she was in a state where she knew that she was going to get something out of this. She was going to get some money, some good money.
Oh, lady was living large. Like, she was a millionaire by the time she was hung.
Yeah. And I mean, if you know for a fact that you're going to get that much money and you're not in the right mental state, I definitely think that it's a possibility that she did go a little bit crazy. She wasn't in the right mental state. So I definitely believe that what happened with her kids was a result of that mental state. But I think, once she knew that that's what would happen, she began to plan, okay, well, this happened to the kids. So if this happens to the husband, I can get a little something.
So maybe her first husband, I think his name was Bert. Yes. Well, not the fiance, sorry.
The fiance, yeah.
Maybe after inheriting that money, she's like, well, this is easy. got a little taste for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
Shame, but I mean, not to play devil's advocate here, but she did defend, like the defense for her case was that her son committed suicide. There is no evidence. It doesn't seem like there's much evidence to support that. But her husband, I forgot the name. So there's so many husbands here. The last one, Melker.
I forgot his name as well.
I'll tell you now. I'll double check. Sydney. Yeah, poor old Sydney. Sydney advocated for her, even after her death, saying that he thought she was innocent. So, yeah, not everyone thinks that she was guilty, and even the court said that there was not enough evidence to put her away for the first two. Like the judge said, he's like, this evidence that you've brought me does not convince me, and it also does not convict the accused. So
yeah.
I
mean, my theory is definitely based off of assumptions. You know, I mean, the reason why I think that, but I mean, the reason why I think that is that it is very strange that the same symptoms that the kids experienced and died from were the same as the fiance and all her husbands.
Yeah, all of it was vomiting.
A very, very big coincidence, and that's why I suspect. That's what I based my theory off of. But again, it is just a theory. I don't know all the facts. You did do very good research, but you know that might not even be everything.
Yeah,
and we can't say for sure that this was her mental state or this was her personality type or whatever, you know. But based on what I have heard, that is what I feel.
Yeah. Okay. So as I said, the story doesn't actually end there. Because even after death, we can't seem to get rid of the horror of Daisy DeMelka. Staff at the cemetery claim to see a woman haunting the cemetery grounds. And even though she's in an unmarked grave and nobody knows where she's buried, it's said that the staff actually know where she's buried because they see her that often.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And what does she do?
Apparently, it's from what I could find, there wasn't a huge amount. There wasn't a huge amount on the sightings of her as much as there was on the case. I did try to look it up, but it doesn't seem like it is more than just sightings. However, everything associated with Daisy seems to be haunted. From the court where her trial was conducted in the Johannesburg Supreme Court, the gallows in Pretoria where she was hung, the house in Turfontein where her victims had died, all of these places are said to be haunted by her. Even the school that she had attended, the nursing school, she's said to be there as well. Like apparently she's just haunting all these places, and it's the only time I've heard of hauntings over long stretches of roads, but I've never heard of a ghost up and down a country haunting basically an entire country.
I've never heard of that before either. That is quite unusual.
So it was quite I was quite interested to find out about her house, because that's actually where I even found out about her, is on one of these websites that talk about all the haunted places in South Africa. They spoke specifically about her house. But you can actually view this house, and it's like all boarded up. There was this guy from one of the radio stations that went in. Sorry, I'm so bad with names. I should have written it down. But he actually wanted to go and see this place. So he got a hold of the owner and said, listen, you know whose house this is? And he's like, yeah, I know. I heard it's this woman who murdered a bunch of people. He's like, okay, cool. Can I look in their house? And he goes, yeah, sure. You're welcome to go into the property. Just don't take photos. So he described what the place looks like. When you come into the house, apparently it's one of those redwood staircases, like the original staircase. So it's like super creepy.
Wow.
But remember, this woman is rich, right? So this house, although it looks kind of small on Google Maps, it's pretty huge because they've turned the 10 rooms into 10 small apartments. The house is
Wow.
now being rented out to tenants. Apparently, they don't get bothered by the ghost, but there have been sightings of her in the windows from people passing
Hmm.
by. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. That's why I'm glad we stay in a place that we kind of know the history of, because I have such a
Yeah.
fear of old houses. Like we went on holiday. I went with Jax's family up on holiday to Grafenet. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Well, my sister-in-law arranged an Airbnb for us in this really, really old, like ancient, like all the buildings in Grafenet are at least 100 years old. Like no, seriously, it's a very, very tiny old town. Beautiful, but
Yeah.
oh my flip, Jax, I could not sleep. I kept Jax up the whole night. I streamed, well, not streamed because there's like no internet there, but I was watching videos until 1 a.m. in the morning because I just couldn't fall asleep because I was so stressed. I was like, I have to fall asleep before Devil's Hour. I was like, I have to sleep before
I've
Devil's Hour.
given up on that.
Oh, I'm
I
fine in this
if
house.
I'm awake, I'm awake.
If like in this house I'm fine, but there, Jess, like I couldn't sleep because we were also it's an old house, right? So it only actually had 2 bedrooms,
Yeah.
but they rented it out as a 3 bedroom place and they just turned the main room, which would have been the living room, into a master room. So it's the only double bed, and with Jackson and I being the only married couple there, we took the double bed. But there are no doors,
Mm.
so we could see straight into the hallway,
Ooh,
and there's no lights because this is like a dark, dusty little house. Oh, I was petrified.
that's
I got no
awful.
sleep that weekend, like none at all. And I don't think I've ever seen Jax lose his temper with me. But he was literally sighing and going like, "Just go to sleep, Roxanne. Just go to sleep."
I would honestly, I would rather have one of the other rooms, like forget the double bed and everything. I'd sleep on the floor, you know?
Yeah, it's
I can't I can't do rooms with no doors and that's not on for me.
if we had to stay there longer, I would have. Yeah. Also, the water smelt like feet.
Ew,
Yeah.
that's
And ever
disgusting.
since the Lisa Lamb case, which we'll definitely do a podcast on sometime,
Oh, yes,
um,
please.
basically for people that don't know, I'll give a quick little preview. It was a student that had gone missing somewhere in America, and they found her body like way later in one of the water tanks on the top of the hotel she was staying in. They only found her because people were complaining that the water tasted and smelt weird. It was a weird color. So ever
Oh,
since then,
just
I smell
imagine.
water. Like we buy purified water, and we buy it in like a big we buy it in that big tank and drink from it. I'm petrified whenever I go to a new place. I always smell the water and like examine it in a glass to make sure that it looks great.
Me too.
Ever since that
Me too.
case,
I do the same thing.
because I was obsessed with the Lisa Lamb case. That's actually what started me on this whole thing.
So was I.
Because it was big when I was in
Me
university. Oh my word. Like they showed me, I was working late on my portfolio. It was like 12, it was like midnight, and it was me and a couple of other of the poorest students that couldn't afford a Mac. We were all sitting around. And this guy Wesley's like, "Do you know the Lisa Lamb case?" I'm like, "No." And like he shared the video with me and I was proper creeped out. I mean, you know how scary the university is at night. Yeah, now
Yes.
midnight. I just found out about Lisa Lam. I watched that creepy video. Guys, YouTube it if you haven't already. It is such a mystery.
I've honestly I've watched that video so many times and I have come up with so many I'm excited for that because I have come up with so many different theories as to what is happening there. It's just such a bizarre
It's
case.
so
It is so,
bizarre.
I don't know, man. I love that. That is probably the story that got me so interested in this as well, because it's just so
That
strange.
started
Like,
me on true crime and just creepy YouTube videos, and that was about 5 years ago that I was exposed to it. So that kind of set, like after that, I was just like, I need to learn more about this case, and then I started hearing about other cases, and it's a bit addictive, actually. I think that's why I love the
yeah,
term crime junkie. Another great podcast, but like
yes.
I'm a spook junkie. Like creepy stuff. There's just something really exhilarating about reading about
Mm.
things. It's refreshing to know that there's still stuff that we as human beings in 2020 still don't know. We don't have the
It's
answers.
fascinating, but it's also kind of scary
Do you not?
that it's 2020 and there's still so much we don't know. But it is also so fun and so
The
interesting.
scariest thing to me, scarier than any of those ghost games, which I'll never play, scarier than any of those like demon hauntings or cold case files. Like the scariest thing for me
Hmm.
is the idea that you can go missing and no one can find you.
Right?
Like the idea of somebody going missing and you just never found, not your remains, not nothing. That freaks me
In
in
2020.
2020. Like we've literally we carry tracking devices with us. Like it's just a
Yeah.
thing. It's like, how do people just go missing? Anyway, we should probably bring this to
It's
an
so,
end.
yes.
Wow,
I
we've
just
been
have
on for quite a while.
one I have one more thing
Mm.
that I want to say. First of all, about the Lisa Lam case. It's not only true crime, it's not just a crime story, but there are also like some supernatural elements in there as well. Because there are some details that no matter how you try to look at it logically, it just doesn't make sense. Nothing
Oh
makes sense.
yes,
So it's
bipolar
like
is not,
part crime.
bipolar is not the reason here. Like
Yes,
no.
they touch on that, and that's
Yeah,
just
like
wrong.
she had bipolar.
It's
Okay,
incorrect.
how did she fit in the tank then if she had bipolar? Does that make you shrink?
And the details of how she gets into the tank
Okay, but wait, we
is
mustn't.
just
We're giving people, not
anyway.
everyone knows about this, and we haven't given details. We haven't done a video on it, so let's save it.
All I'm trying to say here is that the specific details of how certain things happen in that story, you can't explain everything
Mm.
logically. So it's like it's part crime, part true crime, part supernatural, and that
Yeah.
is why I love it so much.
Well, I think love it is
And the
maybe
last
not
thing,
the right word, but
I love researching
okay.
it. I don't love that
Okay.
it happened. I love being able to research that kind of
Mm.
story.
Fair
And
enough.
the last thing that I want to say is that uh, I did mention, uh, okay, although I said that, having large families is not that great for the kids, of course, that's not true for everyone. Um, you know, there are definitely families with like 7+ kids that are fantastic. The kids are all great, everyone's mentally healthy and great. But what I'm referring to is that at that time, you know, at, I don't want people to think that you can't have a big family and that it will have a bad impact on your children, because it's not the same for everyone.
Mm.
It depends on so many things like parenting style, the attitude of the children towards each other, how big the house is,
Yeah.
how much time this family spends together. It's just that with larger families, it's more likely that a child will be overlooked, or that perhaps a mental state will be overlooked. They might not notice that the child has behavioral problems or things like that. So large families are definitely not necessarily always a bad thing.
Mm.
It's just that
Agreed.
it's more likely that problems could happen.
But
So if you want a big family, go for it. Just pay attention to all your kids.
but But, and this is a big but, kids are dicks. And with that, I'd like to say
That
thanks
is-
for listening, guys.
Yes, that is the one for sure definite thing you can take away from
If you haven't
this.
learned anything today, take this, guys, is that kids are dicks. Don't trust them.
And just know what they're doing at all times.
And thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We're really excited to do this. This is something we've been wanting to do for a really long time. Sorry if it was a little bit long. We're totally up for feedback. We really want to make this thing work, and we want people to enjoy it as much as we do. So, yeah, send us a message. Let us know what you think. Leave a comment, and we really hope you enjoyed it.
Yes. And we'll see you next week.
Maybe. Bye.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Bye.
Bye. Okay. When I inhaled, my hair went in my mouth and down my throat. And then
No, don't be so happy. We're talking about death. Hello?
Stop it! We're talking. Don't be so happy. We're talking about death.
Crap. I said sprout instead of sprout, didn't I? That's all I get from you.
Hello.
Oh my god.